Double game week 24 team selection. In today's video, I'll be running through my plans going into the first double game week of the season and a comprehensive analysis on chip strategy and whether or not it's best to use triple captaincy this week if you've got it, assistant manager options as well, or to leave it all together and not play a chip at all. Right then, so we finally made it to the first double game week of the FPL 24-25 season. Liverpool and Everton both having a double game week. Here's how I performed in game week 23. It was a really good game week for me, 85 points. I think it was around a top 100k game week rank for the week. And of course, a huge green arrow up to 440k. That is obviously very encouraging, especially considering I have 4 free transfers to play with going into game week 24, and I already have a Liverpool triple up, so I can focus my transfers on other moves to help bolster my side going into the double game week, but also maybe look at players that help me plan out the next few weeks in FPL rather than just focusing alone on the double game week itself. Obviously, only Liverpool and Everton double, so a lot comes down to how much exposure I want to that Everton team. I've already got the Liverpool triple up and probably the one that I would prefer, that being Trent, Salah and Gakpo. I'm very happy with those 3 going forwards. And although I don't necessarily plan on owning Gakpo for that long, I think the little batch of fixtures that I do plan on owning him for, Ipswich last week, followed by the double game week, then Wolves at home, is going to be a really effective and high upside batch of fixtures for me. Now, last week, as you can see, he was the big difference maker, 16 points from him, 3 attacking returns, and elsewhere on the side, there were only a couple of blanks. So generally quite impressive. Obviously, Arsenal keeping the clean sheet was really helpful. So Raya and Gabriel both getting bonus points as well gave me a little bit of a leg up. And elsewhere, Semenyo getting a last-minute goal for Bournemouth. I was getting a bit frustrated that everyone else seemed to be scoring for Bournemouth and not him. Well, finally, I did actually start Semenyo for an attacking return. Those of you who have been following my channel for a while will know that every single time he's got an attacking return this season, I've managed to bench him. He's done so in the harder fixtures, so it's somewhat understandable, but I finally played him in a week where he scored a goal, so very grateful for that. Gordon got a little something, Salah got an attacking return. Obviously, Isak hauled as well, so maybe I could have captained him, but I can't really have too many complaints. 85 points, big green arrow, 4 free transfers. Let me know how you got on in the comments below. So the big question is, what do I plan on doing with my 4 free transfers? Well, I do plan on making moves, and actually, I've already locked in one of those moves earlier in the week. So again, if you've been watching my videos, you will know that I moved early to remove Raya and bring in Jordan Pickford. Now, Pickford is the Everton player I'm most bullish on, although I don't necessarily expect Everton to keep consistent clean sheets over an elongated period. I think he'll be consistent enough that he'll be good value for money. He's obviously cheaper than Raya and has the double game week with one very decent fixture with a good chance of a clean sheet against Leicester at home. Liverpool at home, we're not expecting much, but if he can keep a few saves, get a couple of save points, and then after that, we're looking at Palace, Man United, not terrible fixtures in which he could get save points and potential clean sheets as well. So very happy to have made that move. Pickford hasn't really moved in price too much. I think he's jumped 0.1, but I moved early because I was that confident that he was going to be the Everton player that I wanted to focus on first and foremost. After that, I now have 3 remaining options as to what I want to do with my transfers. Now, option number 1 is probably the one that I'm most convinced on. I'm almost certainly going to make the move to remove João Pedro to Yoane Wissa. Now, Pedro himself has been extremely frustrating recently. Obviously, only 1 point in game week 23. And although the data's not awful, it is regressing week on week at the moment. And it's only really been held up recently by the penalty that he got against Arsenal. Outside of that, it's been pretty poor for quite a while now. So I am now looking forward to getting rid of him this game week. I could have potentially got rid of him earlier, but if I did, I would have had to make other moves to free up the budget. And the move that I always wanted to make to free up that budget was Raya down to Pickford. That gives me enough to make this move up to Wissa. And I was never going to make that any earlier than game week 24 itself. So I've been patient. I was hoping João Pedro showed a little bit more promise, but alas, it wasn't meant to be. And João Pedro will almost certainly be leaving my squad this week. The only reason I haven't made the move so far is just on the off chance that we get injury news elsewhere that might alter my plans, but this move is almost certainly locked in for me. I absolutely love Wissa. I'm very bullish on him over the next fixture period. He's got one of the highest shot volumes in the league over the last 4 game weeks. His underlying attacking data is very, very good. And it's so much better than the Everton strikers, who would be alternatives for Wissa this game week, given they've got the double. Ndai's got 0.21 XGI per 90. Beto's is 0.50, but it's on such limited minutes. It's such a small sample size that I really don't have any trust that I can place into that. So knowing that Wissa, for me, is going to be a very good long-term pick, and also a good fixture against Spurs, who are very leaky, have a lot of defensive issues right now. They might have Van der Ven back, but even he's been rushed back a little bit, so I'm not confident on that Spurs back line. And Brentford seem tailor-made to cut them apart on the break. So I'm very happy to bring in Wissa. Like I said, it will be for João Pedro, and I'm almost certain that that is the first move I want to make. Now, obviously, I needed a little bit of money to do so. I've currently got 1.3 million in the bank after selling Raya for Pickford. That means I can easily make this move, and it gives me a little bit of wiggle room for manoeuvres elsewhere. In fact, I think it gives me exactly 0.5 million left. With that in mind, I've got 2 other transfers. I could do all of them for free, but it locks me out of making all of these moves if I make the first one. I don't quite have the right amount of money to make options 2 and 3 happen simultaneously. If I was looking at doing option 2, that would be going all in on Brentford, arguably slightly early, because Spurs at home is a good game, but it's not the absolute best fixture that they could possibly have. But it would be to remove Gordon, who himself has been thoroughly decent, good underlying attacking data, in fact, ever so slightly shading Mbeumo's at 0.59. And he's got Fulham, and Fulham, although they've not been bad recently, they've certainly not been in the best nick, and I wouldn't put it past Newcastle to score 2 or 3 against them, especially at St James's Park at home. So this might be rushing it a little bit, but I am very bullish on Mbeumo, like I am with Wissa. He's also got the advantage of penalties. He's a 90-minute man. The data's still very good, and I know that the effective ownership is going to climb very quickly now. So it's whether or not I see this as a move that I need to make this week, or something that I can maybe kick the can down the road on and do in game week 25. As it stands, I think I am actually pretty tempted to make this move and bring in both Brentford players. Without a hit, obviously, it would be the other 2 free transfers. I think I'd have 1 remaining free transfer after this, giving me 2 free transfers going into next game. So I don't think it's the end of the world if I do go full attack on Brentford, and having double Brentford attack against Spurs at home seems like a pretty decent idea to me. Now, it could obviously go very wrong. Spurs aren't an awful side, but I do really like the upside there. Now, unfortunately, like I said, I can't make options 2 and 3 both happen this game week. I just don't quite have the money for it. In fact, I think I'd be only 0.1 short of it, which is frustrating. But maybe it's exactly what I need to help me make up my mind here. Now, initially, when I was drafting my transfer plans moving several game weeks in advance, I did actually have in my mind to remove Greaves, who sat dead last on my bench almost every single game week, and use the spare money that I accumulate from selling Raya to bring in Mykolenko, as well as that second Everton double game weeker. Now, doubling up on the Everton defence, I don't think is the worst idea by any means, but it is putting a couple of eggs into a basket that hasn't necessarily been the tightest defence so far this season. 1.36 XGC per 90 isn't terrible, but I don't realistically see more than 1 clean sheet in the double game week. And Mykolenko, unlike Pickford, doesn't have the opportunity for getting things like save points either. So the upside's a little bit lower on Mykolenko. Of course, he could get an attacking return, but given his XGI per 90 of 0.06, it does seem fairly far-fetched to hope for an attacking return if I make this move. If I did make this move as well, it would stretch my budget a little bit more thinly, and it would make it a little bit more difficult to reach some of the more expensive players, because I've got my money spread across my full 15 then, rather than having 1 or 2 bench spots that are a little bit cheaper. So Greaves, so far this season, I haven't had to call upon even once. So that tells me that I probably don't need a 5th defender to be anything more than a Greaves after this game week is out of the way. Now, I don't want to sell any of my other defenders for Mykolenko. I don't want to get rid of Trent, Gabriel, Robinson, or Lewis Hall. So that kind of just leaves Greaves. And I don't know if it's worth the upside of Mykolenko this game week if I'm going to be benching him in most other game weeks, which would be the case given my other defenders. So it is putting a lot of eggs into one basket, and that being double game week 24 itself. You're really hoping for a clean sheet against Leicester, and then maybe some sort of miracle occurs against Liverpool. Obviously, they might try and keep it as tight as possible, as cagey as possible, but likelihood is that Liverpool score a couple at least. So, at the moment, I'm calling on bringing in Mykolenko a little bit, which was my initial transfer plan. And I think rather than doing that, I'm going to maybe go more heavy on the Brentford attack. And that, I think, sets me up not only well for this game week, but also for the several game weeks following this. Brentford have a great run of fixtures, and not many people are going to have both Mbermo and Wissa. I think that could give me an edge given the fixtures they've got and the underlying data that they are presenting. Right then, so rather than do a captaincy matrix this game week, I thought it'd be more prudent to have a look at the chip strategy and whether or not I'm looking to use one this game week, and if so, which chip. The two most popular ones this week will of course be Assistant Manager, which is now live, now active, and if you don't know how that works, do go and check out my previous video on the Assistant Manager chip. I'll leave a link below and I'll link it at the end of the video as well, which goes into very good detail on how it all works and where the opportunities lie to using it. Other than that, you're looking at potentially triple captaining Mo Salah. He will be by far the most popular captaincy choice, which is why I'm removing the captaincy matrix this week. You could look at other Liverpool players potentially, or if you're really maverick, maybe Everton, maybe Palmer at home to West Ham. But realistically, Salah is going to have an effective ownership of around 240, 250%. And those of us with a triple captaincy chip left will find it quite tempting to use it this game week. Now, I'll start by discussing the triple captaincy for those of you who have it. It's not the only opportunity left to use it. Now, you can look at the other future double game weeks, that being game week 33. It's unconfirmed so far, but it will be a double game week and a fairly large one. And the same goes for game week 36 as well. Now, the problem with both of those double game weeks is because they're larger double game weeks, it is more beneficial to use things like a bench boost, a free hit potentially, or an assistant manager chip on those weeks. Because for one, the bench boost, if you use the bench boost this game week in one of the only 3 doubles, you can only get 6 double game week players anyway. So there's limited upside as to what you can really do with the bench boost there. Whereas if you use it in game week 33 or 36, because of the amount of teams doubling, you might be able to have a full 15 of double game week players. And if not, maybe 14 out of 15, 13 out of 15. And those single game week players that remain also probably will have very strong fixtures and you wouldn't normally want to bench them anyway. So for me, I think bench boost is allocated to one of those last 2 double game weeks, the bigger ones, which leaves assistant manager chip and triple captain to use in the other double game weeks. Now, assistant manager chip, I don't hate it this week by any means, and I do go into a bit more detail on it in my previous assistant manager video, but the 2 options on the table are Arne Slot and David Moyes. Now, there's a very obvious split here. It's whether you want to go a little bit more safe and defensive with Slot. There's still upside there, and I'll go into why, but you could also go maverick on David Moyes. Now, David Moyes at the moment has 1 table bonus fixture in the double game week, that's Liverpool, and 1 fairly comfortable fixture that you might hope that Everton get a win in. Now, obviously, you're not seeing massive upside even if they do win in that Leicester game because they don't get table bonus, but it wouldn't be crazy to suggest that they might get a 10-pointer, maybe 11 if they're lucky, if you get a clean sheet and a few goals in that. After that, though, it's a bit of a moonshot at Liverpool. If they come away with a draw, you're pretty happy, but the upside is a maximum of 10 points pretty much, because you're either getting 3 points for the draw, 5 for the table bonus on the draw, and then you're either getting the clean sheet, 0-0 draw, that would add up to 10, or you're getting the goals in the draw. So you remove the clean sheet, and maybe it's a 1-1 draw, that'll give you 1 extra point, that's 9 points in total, 2-2 draw, 2 extra points, 10 in total, and so on and so forth. But the upside is fairly limited. We've only ever gotten, I think, 1 5-all draw, for example, in the Premier League history. So it's very unlikely that he's going to get huge points in that second game unless he gets the win. Now, if he gets the win, obviously you're laughing, but I'm not sure I can put all of my faith in David Moyes specifically with Everton to get the win against Arne Slot's Liverpool, who are flying at the moment. It'll be a tight game, but I think there are going to be higher confidence intervals later on in the season where I can use the assistant manager chip on a high upside pick if I want to go for a high upside pick and a table bonus selection later on in the season when you've got relegation fodder who are really scrapping for their lives against teams that are potentially on the beach. I'm not sure that this is the best opportunity for me to go for the upside. I also really like the idea of leaving it later on in the season when I know how the land's going to lie. I know whether or not I need to chase rank, and I can make a decision on whether I go a little bit more pragmatic, maybe a little bit more cautious, perhaps someone like a Pep Guardiola with games that are fairly safe wins. You'll get a few points from them, but the upside is maybe a little bit tapered, but you can rely on at least 25, 35 points. Or if I am chasing rank and I'm not happy with my overall rank towards the end of the season, I could be looking at going for someone with a much lower chance of winning the game, but table bonus attached if they do. And again, I can really attack 3 different game weeks at the end of the season and go hell for leather, swing for the fences, and go for something miraculous. That's why I like using the assistant manager chip later on. I don't hate Slot, I don't hate Moyes, but Moyes specifically, I think there are better, higher upside potential routes to table bonus later on. And with Slot, whilst I don't hate the fixtures, and I think he probably wins 2 of the next 3, I'm not as confident as I would be later on in the season on some of the bankers either. Bournemouth are in great form, and Everton also will be no rollover game. At Goodison Park, it's the final Merseyside derby there. Everton have been in decent nick under Moyes as well. It won't be easy. I don't see Liverpool scoring 4 or 5 goals, which is where the upside really comes from on the assistant manager chip when you don't have table bonus. So I don't hate either of them by any means, and if you want to go there, that's absolutely fine, especially if you don't have triple captaincy. You might want to focus your assistant manager chip now, and for me, because I've got both of those chips remaining, I'm kind of running out of opportunities to use the triple captaincy if it's not this game week, and it feels like I might waste it a little bit if I do it in game week 33 or 36, when there are so many other teams doubling that I can get higher upside from a bench boost or assistant manager just because of the wide variety of options I could pick a manager from. In terms of single game weeks for Salah that you could put the armband on and triple captain him, obviously he's still got Southampton at home. That's a low-hanging fruit. You've also got players like Haaland, Palmer, maybe even Saka if he comes back before the end of the season, who will have great fixtures in single game weeks that you could target. But when I look at it this way, he's going to get the appearance points for 2 fixtures here no matter what. And all I really am hoping for is 1 attacking return in each fixture. And I don't think it's fanciful to suggest that he gets that in both fixtures against Bournemouth and Everton. They won't be easy fixtures, like I said, but they don't even need to win the matches for Salah to get an attacking return in each. And if he gets 2 attacking returns across that double game week, with maybe a bonus point or 2 attached to each, and the appearance points as well to boot, we're looking at 18 to 20 points. And that on a triple captaincy chip is absolutely fine by me. Now, obviously, it could capitulate. It could go really, really wrong. I'm playing the odds here, and you're doubling your odds if you're playing it in a double game week. So even though it's not the best 2 fixtures in particular, I do still like Salah this week. And because I've still got all my chips to use, I really need to get the triple captaincy out of the way if I'm going to use it in a double game week. Because after this one, there's no other opportunities to use it unless I use the assistant manager or bench boost in a single game week, or of course this week, which I've already described to you, I'm just not going to do. So that's why I'm using triple captaincy this week on Mo, and that's why I'm also not using assistant manager just yet. But please do let me know in the comments below what you're thinking of doing with your chip strategy this game week, and whether or not you disagree with me on the balance of triple captaincy versus assistant manager this week, because I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts on it. Right then, so on to my full team selection, and I haven't quite yet made my 2 extra free transfers I discussed earlier on, that being the Brentford boys coming in. But here's how I shape up at present. I've already brought in Pickford for his double game week. I've got triple Liverpool against Bournemouth and Everton away from home, and my triple captain is active on Mo Salah, as I've just discussed. Now, a quick word on Cody Gakpo that I brought in last game week ahead of Ipswich, obviously my game week 23 hero, and some of you out there might be hesitant on bringing him in ahead of game week 24 because of expected minutes. And although he does get taken off fairly early quite regularly, he still gets pretty decent minutes for a Liverpool forward that isn't called Mo Salah, and he is undoubtedly a part of the favoured front 3 at the moment. I think with Liverpool in the league position they're in right now, even though they've got Spurs in the Carabao Cup semi-final, a very important game, and then Plymouth in the FA Cup in between Bournemouth and Everton. It's a very long double game week. It's spaced out incredibly wide. They've fitted 2 games in between those 2 fixtures. I can see him playing almost certainly the Spurs game because it's so important. They'll want to overturn the deficit and get into the final of that. But he's so important to them right now, and the spacing is such that there is a little bit of a gap between each of the games, and he'll probably rest in the Plymouth game as well. I'd be fairly confident that he starts both of the matches against Bournemouth and Everton. He might get taken off a little bit early in one, maybe even both of them, but I'd be surprised if he gets under 120 minutes in total, and that for me is absolutely fine for Gakpo, given his price point and given the data. You could also say the same of any other of the Liverpool forwards, so Diaz, even Darwin as well. There's just no way that they're going to confidently be predicted to get over what Gakpo gets in terms of minutes going into this game week. Outside of that, you could look at double Liverpool defence, and that is an option, and it's something that I discussed more at length in my previous video on who to buy, so do go check that out for my views on that. But like I said, I'm very comfortable with this Liverpool triple up. It is the one that I would prefer to have going into this game week. So very happy with that. And I think I'm only going to go into game week 24 with one Everton player, that being Jordan Pickford. I've already discussed I don't really love having Mykolenko on top of that, unless it suits your team structure. And for me, it just spreads me a little bit thin on the budget. It gives me a 5th defender that I'm always going to bench, even though he's 4.4 million after this game week. And I think the upside is best chased, for me anyway, on bringing in the Brentford players and just not wasting the extra free transfer on Mykolenko either. Now, you could have very good success by doubling up on the Everton defence if they keep a clean sheet against Leicester, but I don't think that's a certainty, and I prefer having the upside of Pickford, who can keep save points even if they don't get the clean sheet. So that's why I've gone the way I have. I'm not in any way interested in Ndiaye, who not only has poor data, but also might be injured going into game week 24. Obviously, he got a penalty with DCL off the pitch, and his data has been a bit better under Moyes, but it's still just such a small sample size, and obviously the penalty just throws the data completely out of whack as well in terms of noise, that I just can't rely on the last 2 game weeks of that data to reliably bring him into my team. You might have a bit more confidence in him, and that's absolutely fine. Of course, feel free to go for him. He can't be a terrible pick. He's got a double game week, and if he's fit, then Leicester at home is a great fixture for him. But I just don't see a universe where after this game week is out of the way, I'm going to love looking at him in my team. And although I could bench him, he's just not a bench player that I'd even want either. So I prefer to go for Wissa because I've got the money. Outside of that, looking at the other maybe weak points in my starting 11, I've got Trent next to Gabriel and Lewis Hall. Now, obviously, I think I would prefer Mykolenko this game week in particular over Gabriel or Lewis Hall, but it's not just about this game week. I think both of them are great picks moving forwards. I still think both have reasonable chance of decent upside this game week. I genuinely think the Arsenal City game is going to be a real tight affair, a bit of a stodgy game. Arsenal are going to try and make it as tight as possible, and it will be a game decided on moments. And that moment could easily come from a set piece, as we know Arsenal specialise in. If Gabriel gets his head on the end of something, he could end up with a big haul. If we get lucky, they get the clean sheet, they get the headed goal from Gabriel. I could be looking at a monster haul from him. I'm not expecting all of that to happen, but I'm giving myself a bit of a chance there, and I'm going on gut a little bit. I do prefer that over Robinson away from home, and I do also prefer it over Greaves at home to Southampton, although that's a great fixture. That's going to be a tightly contested match. Southampton are scrambling for their lives, although I think they're probably dead and buried anyway, and I don't see it as a fixture that you could guarantee a clean sheet on either. So I prefer Gabriel, and I think he's got a decent enough chance of getting some sort of attacking return or clean sheet in that fixture. Lewis Hall as well at home to Fulham. Like I said, Fulham haven't been great recently, so I'm very happy to start him there. A little bit blunt up front as well, so Hall has a decent chance of a clean sheet. In the midfield, Salah, Ahmad and Palmer are staying. Obviously, Salah triple captain. Palmer, I know he's being sold by a lot of managers, but he's got a great set of fixtures to come. He's still well priced for what he provides. West Ham at home as well. There's just no way I'm looking at getting rid of him. I still think he's a fantastic asset to have. And there's not really anything else I'd be doing with the budget either if I did sell him. So he absolutely stays for me. Gordon is very 50-50. That's the transfer I might make to Mbeumo, but I'm not locking that in just yet. Gordon has decent enough upside himself against Fulham. It's just long-term, I think Mbeumo is the player I prefer in that position. I do marginally prefer Mbeumo against Spurs over Gordon against Fulham. It could very much go either way, though, so it's definitely not a transfer I need to make. Ahmad at home to Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace obviously have been decent. Ahmad and Man United haven't been that great recently, but it was only 2 game weeks ago or 3 games weeks ago that Ahmad got the hat-trick. So I'm not losing faith in him entirely. And he got an offside goal in the dying seconds against Fulham as well. So it's not like nothing's going his way. He could certainly get some sort of attack and return in that game. And I'm more than happy to start him this game. Up front, I'll be getting rid of Pedro for Wissa, so I'll be happy with my front 3. Gakpo, double game week. We've already talked about him. Isak as well at home to Fulham, I think is absolutely fine. And then Pedro will become Wissa, who again, great upside. On the bench, I've currently got Semenyo at home to Liverpool, and I don't think it's the worst idea in the world to consider starting him, considering how good Bournemouth have been and the fact that he does just seem to have a knack of returning against the strongest opponents. But Liverpool are the best defence in the league, and I think, yet again, I'm going to back the scientific logic behind the fact that it is less likely that they score big in a week where they go up against a better opponent. It's going to hurt me again. I can see it coming. I'm happy enough with my front 7 that Semenyo is probably the player that I'm willing to bench this game week. But after this week's out of the way, Bournemouth players in particular look like great buys and great holds because they've got a great run of fixtures all the way through to, I think, game week 33. So I'm very happy to own him. Doesn't quite get a starting spot for me this game. As we wrap up today's video, do let me know in the comments below how your team's shaping up going into game week 24, how many double game weekers you're planning to have, and if you've got any questions, as always, let me know and I'll try and get back to you before the deadline hits.